I just want to point out one thing. Mike is the king because he showed his glass, and I got it right. I'm like, what do you think's in that?
I already know.
Bacon?
There you go.
Yep.
What's the whiskey?
The whiskey is the Kirkland Isla single malt Scotch.
Oh, nice.
It's better than an olive and a martini.
Yeah.
There you go. This is breakfast, so this is a definitive breakfast.
Nice.
That's tremendous.
That is amazing. What do you think? Is it good? Did it work?
Oh, I like it. Yeah. I mean, the smokier the bacon, the better, because it then layers that on top, and when you stick your nose into it,
Yeah.
this isn't that smoky, but it's what I had. If it's a cheap but good peated whiskey, give it a go.
Perfect. Okay.
All right, 3, 2, and 1. Welcome, Dramfacers. We are back with the Colonials with episode number 4. Gonna get a little woot woot something?
Woot woot.
Quattro.
God, we're
It
enthusiastic.
sounded like a train, Adam.
That was the most subtle, enthusiastic woot I have ever heard. Love it.
Is that a nice way of saying pathetic?
But this is a very special episode. Not only is it because number 4, but because, as our theme will be, it's not just for breakfast anymore. We are bringing you the breakfast episode, and we are particularly armed and ready for this particular endeavor. I have 5 amazing lads with me: Mike, Adam, Chuck, Stuart, and Cleon. And before we get to what's in the glass, because the glass is going to be a moving target, I'm going to ask what's on your plate. Stuart, lead us off.
I got the quintessential North American breakfast, I feel like. So a couple pancakes or flapjacks, I guess some might call them. Canadian maple syrup, because why not?
There you go.
And I've got homemade rosemary, black pepper smoked bacon that I make myself.
Yes.
So it's all just commingling beside me. My nostrils are just itching. I want to get into it. I really do.
Sweet. Cleon.
I was just going to say, if there isn't a better reason for someone to invent smell-o-vision right now, it would be to smell what's cooking up in Stu's house.
Yeah.
I'm barraged by his smoker photos and videos on the chat. So, all right, so down here in Melbourne, this is going to be a while. This is going to be a while. All right, so let's hop on this train.
Can we just say that it's actually breakfast time in Melbourne right now?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, it's actually more brunch o'clock because it's about 10:20 now. So whatever.
That's fine.
That's,
You know what? That's even better for whiskey. I mean,
Yep.
7 a.m. whiskey is a little tough, but like 10:30? Oh, yeah. There you go.
Well within range.
exactly.
Oh, yeah.
One might say it's the sweet spot. So what you got on your plate, Cleon?
So to start off, I've got a Vegemite toast. So it's keeping it really Australian to begin with. Vegemite, for those who might not know, is like a yeast extract spread, which isn't particularly appetizing, but it's kind of like the first thing that you think about when you think about Australia and food. People often bring it back when they come on holiday, and yeah, it has this wonderful salty umami addictive nature to it. And I think when I first tried it as an adult, the thing that it kind of reminded me of is like, oh, I'm spreading a Guinness on my toast. It's kind of like if beer was a spread, it would be Vegemite. So I've got some Vegemite on some thick cut sourdough toast, and I'm pairing it with. Oh, are we talking about the whiskeys yet, or are we just going to go on?
No, just your breakfast. Just your
Yeah,
breakfast.
All right. So we got that, and then Melbourne being a multicultural hub of culture and food, I've got stuff that isn't kind of innately Australian, but is Australian now because of the culture that we are. So I've got an English muffin with pork sausage, a fried egg, and those sort of thin cheese slices that you get where it's not even cheese. We call it plastic cheese.
Oh, no. Oh.
A cow teat has not been remotely near this thing, but it works. It works for the muffin. So I've got that, and then moving on, I've got a everything bagel with a bit of.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of paying homage to where you are, Mike. I've got an everything bagel with some smoked salmon, cream cheese, dill, capers, squeeze a lemon, a pinch of black pepper, and some cornichons on the side. I think the boys have seen me mention this before.
I can taste that one already. Ooh, that
Nice.
sounds good.
That sounds super good.
And then
Bring
to keep
it.
it really, really Melburnian, I've got a lamb borek. So you see these everywhere in the markets.
A lamb what?
So a burek, I think, is the more sort of cultural pronunciation, but they are a type of stuffed bread that comes from countries like Turkey, Lebanon. Eastern European countries have them as well. So I'll show it to you on the screen. So it's like, and it's stuffed with lamb, chili, lemon. It is delicious, and pretty much all of our markets have like a borek place because it's just become a part of the culture now to have your borek while you do your shopping. So I've got that. And then for our dessert breakfast, I've got a
What?
choc almond croissant. So,
Oh yeah.
Oh,
one of these bad boys. So yeah, twice baked choc almond croissant. So we'll see how we go. I'm either gonna be rolling out of the podcast or carried in a stretcher in an ambulance. So we'll see.
If you hear snoring in about
I
half
was
an
gonna
hour,
say, we know where it's coming from. That's a serious breakfast flex. I love it.
Yep.
Mike,
Well, obviously, I'm overwhelmed with a sense of inadequacy here. Coming after both Stu and Cleon. Cleon is actually, he neglected to mention he is actually eating for his neighborhood. I decided to keep it super simple and kind of go for universal breakfasts and some stuff which kind of overlaps with some of the sort of tasting notes you occasionally have on whiskey. The one concession I'm making to where I am, which is obviously New York in terms of American-style food, peanut butter on toast. Super simple.
Wow. That sounds epic.
I wanted to do toast because it's toast. And, you know, that's kind of nice stuff. And what else do you have at breakfast? But the other one I kind of did toast two ways. And I've got marmalade and toast.
Mhm.
Again, tasting notes, marmalade, a bit more English, kind of a more bitter note. And I also have no idea, by the way, on the peanut butter, what on earth it's going to be like drinking when I've just eaten some peanut butter and it's all kind of clacking the inside of your mouth and it introduces some
I think
whiskey.
I've got the perfect thing for you, Mike, and it's called Screwball.
oh, good Lord.
I hope you're wrong. Yes, I have tasted that, and I'm not going to say anything else. Other than that, I didn't taste much. And then my other, to quote Cleon here, and then, but I only have one and then, as opposed to 27, I decided to make some oatmeal and threw some brown sugar on it and some raisins, some sultanas and what have you. And I'm going to try each of these with 3 different whiskeys together.
Nice. Adam.
my breakfast today is something that's very special to me. It's sardines on toast
Yay.
with a little bit of tomato, canned sardines, Portuguese sardines. When I was a kid, my dad used to feed me sardines on toast for breakfast when I had a test at school because he said it made my brain work better. So,
okay then.
Well,
yeah, exactly.
And
So it's a little bit of nostalgia, and I am. It has carried over into adulthood. I'm a big sardine fan. I have sardines for lunch all the time, and then I do have a breakfast dessert as well, and that is a donut. It's a ube donut,
oh yeah.
a what
Ooh,
donut?
baby.
ube flavored. It's actually from one of these fancy hipster vegan donut shops, but it's ube flavored, which is like a. Maybe Cleon can explain what that is.
I
'cause
think-
he's in the area. It's like a sweet potato kind of thing.
It's a purple yam, and it's really popular in the Philippines. So a lot of Southeast Asian desserts are often ube flavored.
I don't mean to offend any of the listeners out there, but as soon as you said vegan donut, I think Stuart and I both had our moment of what the
Confusion.
ever-loving...
We had some cringe.
There's some hopes and dreams holding this thing together, I think.
Chuck, what do you have on the plate?
So tonight, since this is breakfast for dinner for those of us in the States, I did 2 things tonight. Did a savory half of the breakfast and a sweet half. So the savory side is Huevos Rancheros, made basically totally custom.
Oh, nice.
And for those who are not familiar with the term, it's basically some sort of like egg on bean combo, and you can kind of dress it up however you want. In my case, I had a couple of tortillas I fried up for the occasion, and a couple of eggs, avocado. I'm pretty sure there's 4 different kinds of chili peppers on the plate. There's green chilies, there's Urfa, there's Serrano, jalapeno, and that's probably and chipotle. Yep.
So you'll lose the gift of speech at some point.
No, this isn't entirely hot, and it's perfect. It's not actually hot. It's definitely warm, but it's not hot.
Right.
The Serrano does have a kick, but it's only momentary. And then
Like a
for
stun
the
gun.
sweet side, I made homemade, fresh, never made before by my own hands, something called bizcochitos, which is a traditional sort of New Mexican, maybe Mexican as well, but sort of like a sugar cookie. I think it's also maybe a cross between a sugar cookie and like a biscotti, perhaps, but it's a lot like a sugar cookie. So it's made with leaf lard, which I've never cooked with before, and a whole lot of sugar, and
No.
anise. The cool thing is it includes a little bit of aniseed, crushed
Oh, yeah.
aniseed,
Little,
and cinnamon. So it's got
Or Mike
I thought
just-
it would be- yeah.
Mike, you lost Mike.
Sorry, you said anise. I thought you said something different. And for a moment there, I was completely what?
Mike just
We
had
were talking
crushed
about
anise and he drifted off.
Yeah, we were talking about organ meats earlier on before we got on. So, yeah.
So I'm looking forward to all this. I think I've got the perfect whiskeys to pair with this dish. We can talk about a little later.
There you go. And
So what do you got, Rob?
I am representing the South. I have a plate of cheese, corn grits, and a couple of eggs on top, because eggs and grits, you don't go wrong with eggs and grits, my friend. But also, and more importantly, the homemade sausage, pepper, white gravy on homemade buttermilk biscuits.
Yeah.
Biscuits and gravy. You say biscuits and gravy south of the Mason-Dixon line, you're a friend. And that's it. It's just beautifully salty, sagey goodness.
Can you maybe explain what grits are for some of the more international listeners?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Grits, white corn dried up and ground. So it's pretty much what it is. And I was just going to say masa.
You could call it masa down south of the border. Yep.
Right.
Mhm.
Some people, it's a different kind of porridge type consistency, depending on how you make it.
Mhm.
Put a couple of shavings of Gouda in there and make it a little cheesy, or whatever your favorite cheese is. A couple of eggs on top. That's breakfast. If you put shrimp on it, you got
That's
lunch
dinner.
or dinner.
Yeah. And shrimp and grits
Oh,
is an amazing, amazing dish. It's cheesy grits with shrimp on top.
Yeah.
Can't be beat.
Yeah. I've been in the US too long because I can't remember what I, as a Brit, would have known that at. It's something that begins with P, because it's a very simple. It's very big in Italy and European countries more so.
Polenta.
the polenta.
Polenta, that's it.
Polenta.
Polenta. Yeah, basically over there it's polenta.
I think the key distinction for grits is that it's sort of coarse ground.
Mhm.
So, you can have, masa, I think, is actually kind of finely ground, for instance.
Yeah, it's
And
usually
polenta
fine.
is, yep. But they're all same family.
So all the listeners out there might be saying to themselves, what the hell are we doing with breakfast and whiskey? And we have answers for that. We've been talking about this for quite some time, because the Splinter Cell that is the Colonials started out by us just having our own little Zoom chats. And oftentimes Cleon was the man, because being in the time zone he was eating breakfast. And we were all just agog by what he would bring to the table with smoked salmons. And, well, you heard what the litany of things he has today, for God's sakes. And so we started talking about breakfast and all kind of breakfast cereals. And to what Cleon said way back in one of our earlier episodes, it's tasting notes are autobiographical. Everything that you've heard about what's on our plates is comfort food, and that's what breakfast really is. Breakfast is comfort food. And at the Dramface water cooler, through our WhatsApp group chat, we have a lot of impassioned discussions, yes, about premiumizations of whiskeys and all sorts of things like that. But you'd be surprised. Some of the most impassioned chats have been about toast. How do you prepare your toast? Is it burnt? Is it lightly toasted? What kind of bread? How do you toast it? Eggs, and of course, peanut butter. But there are other reasons why we have whiskey with breakfast. And like Mike we're talking about it.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I mean, I bet you guys, I've always joked about the idea of a breakfast whiskey. Oh, let's make a nice breakfast whiskey, just because it's a ludicrous idea to drink whiskey at breakfast. And just to be clear, we're not advocating everybody suddenly takes up drinking whiskey with breakfast, because there's no new experience to be had there. Well, there is actually falling down drunk at 10 o'clock in the morning and all that. But that's not something we're recommending.
Absolutely.
But it was kind of interesting. And then I was at a tasting with Charlie McLean, and I don't remember exactly because this was a very long tasting. It went on for about 6 hours. But at some point, somebody asked the question about, well, what time of day do you do your tasting? Of course, Charlie does a lot of tasting, and often he'll start in the morning. But we then kind of got into this conversation about, well, actually, there's some science and certainly a lot of theories that say your taste buds are more attuned early in the morning, or at least in the morning. And I've looked this up, and it's to do with circadian rhythms, and I think some of it's social conditioning as well. But apparently, when you think about this in general terms, not so much specific tastes, our taste buds, our sense of taste, because obviously some of that is smell, our sense of taste is more acute in the mornings, and then it kind of drops off and then picks up again later in the evening, which is probably social conditioning because it's dinner time. I don't know. And apparently our ability to taste sweet things is more acute in the mornings than it is at other times of the day. So there is some sense when you read these other things, when you say, whoa, how do you prepare for a tasting? What's a good time to do a tasting? Sometimes you'll say, well, the mornings, although most times they say don't do it in the morning because you're then going to go and drive. That's actually got nothing to do with your ability to taste things, of course. But, so there's the notion that actually it might be a good time to taste if you haven't already ruined your palate by cleaning your teeth or whatever else it is you do at breakfast time. I mean, I would say drinking your coffee, but I know I have other people on this podcast who think coffee and whiskey is a very good thing to do. But we'll argue about that one on another podcast. But so there is some science to it, and there's plenty of chatter about it and all the rest of it. So we thought, let's try and see how outrageously stupid the idea of eating breakfast and drinking whiskey is, whether it's evening, as it is for some of us here, or whether it's in the morning.
There's also that natural connection between the nature of breakfast food, right? We're having it in the morning because we need that long burning energy. We need to get our engines going, and often our breakfast food, and I think you can gather by some of the dishes that we talked about, it's like oily, carb heavy, protein heavy. Yeah. And those are all foods that can hold itself with whiskey, right? You're not going to be having a whiskey with a plain lettuce, tomato, ham sandwich. It's just not going to be something where you can take a bite, have a sip, and have that kind of intermingled in any sort of, compatible way. But with something where you have a lot of that oil and that fat, you can wash it down with the whiskey, and that kind of pairs so naturally together.
And I think it also has to do with our flavor associations as well. Usually, we heard basically 5 different ways to do incredibly different breakfasts here right now. Right. But a lot of those descriptors actually end up on the back of a label, right? So some bourbons often get like brown sugar maple syrup. Well, that can be on a long list of different evening desserts, but also in breakfast. And I'm going to jump right into one just because it's a perfect example. So when this idea came up, I was like, oh, I have the perfect whiskey for this. I have the one to rule them all. And it's my first Ben Nevis. I've never, ever had a Ben Nevis because they're very rare in my market for whatever reason. So it's a 2015 Carnmore 7-year-old Ben Nevis in a sherry butt, or sherry butts maybe. You read the official tasting notes on the back, okay? A stack of American pancakes, rashers of smoked bacon, smothered in sweet, sticky maple syrup.
Perfect. Sounds like
perfect. That sounds exactly like my plate. So we're using a lot of these flavor descriptive terms that often all end up in breakfast foods already anyways. So it's kind of almost unique pairing in that way. It, like Cleon's perfect example, you don't say a lettuce sandwich in
Right.
a tasting note, or if it isn't a tasting note, that's probably a real funky whiskey, but one that
Yeah.
we're probably not going to like. So
Exactly.
I'm fascinated, Stu, to wonder whether that Ben Nevis release, well, I don't know if it's a US exclusive, but does it have the same tasting notes in the UK, which would not be as resonant? I'd love to know the answer to that.
Right.
a good
Yeah.
point.
Canadian
That's a
bacon
good
and
point.
maple
Very
syrup.
good point.
Yeah.
At this juncture, I think we should go around and every one of us look at everyone else's plate and say, what would you pick? And see if that was actually something like that. So, like with Stewart's, for Stewart, when he described his, the first thing I thought of was the Kilhoman Seneg. I mean, it's got the sherry bit to it, but that Kilhoman peat would go with the bacon. That's what I would think.
I think Ardbeg Ugdal, if I didn't have this, if I didn't have this Ben Nevis with the almost perfect descriptors on the back for this episode,
Yeah.
I mean, right on the front, I think Ugdal, actually, hold on. I have one right next to me. I didn't realize that.
I have one.
Right on the front label, it has 3 words describing Ugdal.
Oh, yes.
Treacle,
Yeah.
bacon, bonfires.
Yeah.
There's bacon again.
There it is.
Mhm.
So going around, starting with Mike, what do you think would have been a pairing for Stewart's breakfast?
Yeah, I was going to say, I'll beg 10, Lefroy 10, definitely something in that territory, any of those.
Adam?
I think Ben Nevis is pretty great. But yeah, also Ardbeg, probably. Yeah.
So we got a peat theme.
Yeah. Chuck and Cleon?
Easily, the Ugadal is the one that came to mind for me.
Yeah, Ardbeg is very bacony to me, so I'd go Ardbeg. But as a point of difference, I would say that Kilkerran Heavy Peat that we talked about a few weeks ago, Stu, I thought that would go pretty well with that particular breakfast as well.
We'll get around to it, but I've got a lineup of 3 whiskeys here. One of them is not like the others, and it is working surprisingly well. So we'll get to that later.
All right. Mike, you've got toast and oatmeal.
Yeah, toast with peanut butter and marmalade, very different. And yeah, oatmeal with raisins and stuff.
Adam, what would you pair with that?
Oatmeal, I'd go with Highlands bourbon cask, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Probably like 46%. I don't think you want to go cask strength.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good point.
Because I think oatmeal for me is kind of creamy, like, and I think it would maybe cut through it nicely.
There is a little bit of milk added to this oatmeal.
Good. Yeah.
Does it make a difference for the marmalade and the peanut butter he's got on his toast?
So I would go different. I would go Aaron 10
Ooh.
because of the orange.
Yeah,
The
I was just
orange,
gonna say,
the
good
orange
call.
and zest in the porridge, I think, would be kind of a good counterpoint. For the peanut butter, you got to go cask strength. It's got to go toe to toe in your gum cavities here.
With what kind of whiskey?
I think
Strength what?
cask strength and either PX or Oloroso. So
Something kind of fruity to go like peanut butter and jelly. Yeah.
peanut butter and jelly, or
That's
like
a good call.
raisins and peanut butter. I think that would work, but it's got to be cask strength. Like, it's got to punch hard.
Oh, dude, I've got cold strength here. I have 68.9 waiting for
my
this.
goodness. We'll get
Look
to
at that.
it.
We're on the same page.
11 years in Oloroso.
So Cleon
yeah.
might be asleep at some point just because of the food coma. You might be asleep for another reason.
Yeah, we'll see.
Anyone have a different thought about the oatmeal and the toast peanut butter marmalade bit?
Yeah, I was thinking if you're having a bit of brown butter and raisins, I thought something like a Glendronach 18 would go quite well with it. Add some of that dried fruit, add some of that nutmeg spice, like sherry spice with that. You're kind of adding on flavor. You're garnishing the oatmeal with it. So I thought that might be really nice. And for the marmalade toast, I reckon an Anik 18 or even an Anik 24 if you can still get that. Because that Anik to me is pure like citrus peel marmalade, I think. The zestiness and brightness of that whiskey would go so well.
Beautiful,
That's a good
clean.
call.
Yeah. Yep.
So I've noticed a lot of you are picking similar flavors, like looking for similar flavors in a whiskey to to go with what the flavors you have in your breakfast, but I think sometimes you need something that just sort of like cuts through or opposite. Actually, for me, like I did a little test drive because I'm not normally a big food and whiskey together kind of guy. I don't normally eat food while I'm drinking. Actually, my favorite pairing for whiskey is beer. but
Two straws.
yeah, but so I had this donut, and I was like, I don't know what the hell's gonna pair with this. It's ube. It's got some like earthy flavors, a little bit like, and I tried a sherry cask whiskey, and it totally just was swamped by the donut. Like the sweetness, just like. And then I tried a bourbon. I thought maybe bourbon sweet's good, and then I actually settled on a rye because I found the rye just cut through the, like, it still had its own sweetness, but a different kind of sweetness, and it just sort of cut through the sweetness of the donut.
That's a good contrast.
Mm-hmm.
I like that.
Yeah, and I think that's half the fun of an exercise like this is experimenting, just like you did, Adam, trying to figure out what works because there's no whiskey I've come across where the tasting notes are somehow complementary to eggs and beans.
You mean they don't make that?
Yeah. So you have to kind of like figure out, what might complement it, and if you can go down the complementary route, you can go down the contrast route, or something altogether left field, and just see what works and see what happens. And to be honest, tonight's one of the first nights I've done a food and whiskey combination. I'm usually, when it's whiskey, it's all whiskey. It's just I'm paying attention to it. I'm taking tasting notes, or I'm just lounging and relaxing with it. I'm not usually eating it with dinner, but tonight, I wanted to do something similar and do some contrast and see what works as well for mine.
Yeah, whenever I do a tasting, I always have some foods out. Partly just to keep people eating, but also because a lot of it goes really, really well. I mean, like nice, hard, dry cheeses, like an aged Gouda, Manchego, Parmesan, anything in that territory. And then, charcuterie and nuts and dates and things like that. Love all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to say, Chuck, because there are a lot of foods that I eat as well, like Mexican food and Indian food, which you're not going to read a bottle of whiskey that says lamb korma on the label, right? So I often think about, well, what are garnishes that I put on these dishes, and how can whiskey kind of emulate that flavor? So for me, Mexican food, I often think, well, we always finish, a nice plate of Mexican food with the squeeze of lime. And to me, that screams Ardnamurchan. A lot of the Ardnamurchans that I've had have this really zesty liminess in there that I think goes pretty well with Mexican food, and can kind of like complements the spice, because it is a weird sensation when you have that bit of chili in your mouth and then you're putting that whiskey in and it like flares it up again. And I don't know, I feel like it's a kind of like really fun sort of challenge to have that spicy bite full of a taco and then swirl in a bit of Ardnamurchan in there, and it's just a party in your mouth.
Yeah, that sounds brilliant. If anything, there's that whole thing. There's a few other tasting notes that can come through, like you said, like the small ingredients, the garnishes. So like pepper,
Right.
Whether it's peppercorn or jalapenos, that sort of vegetal peppery note that can come through in some whiskeys. There's sometimes a black pepper or a white pepper that some whiskeys carry.
Peated Glenturret is so vegetal to me, so I reckon that might be like one to pair with really funky foods as well.
That's a really good point. I had a wonderful one of those recently. Blew my mind. But also, you just talking about Ardnamurchan reminds me, I love Ardnamurchan with oysters.
Oh.
There's a salty note that's
I
often
can
on
see that.
Ardnamurchan, and it's not all about the salt and brine at all. There's a load of other stuff going on there to the point about contrast.
Yeah.
And that's... Oh, now I wish I got some oysters for breakfast.
All right, let's do this. Let's join Mike and Chuck's together. Let's get an oyster, and then a little drop of Ardnamurchan, and then just a tiny drop of sriracha sauce, and we're in flavor.
Yeah.
So with the oysters and Ardnamurchan, what would you pair with Adam's sardines?
Personally, I would lean towards something peaty.
Hmm.
I mean, you could go for something to offset that kind of maritime thing. So maybe I wouldn't go for an Isla peat.
Right.
Maybe I go for a peated Highland Park or something like that. But yeah, to me, I would definitely want to go peat and smoker there. Kind of want to start a fight in my mouth.
I was thinking Bladnoch.
Why is that, Stu?
Ooh, that's a good call.
I haven't had a lot of the official bottlings recently. The prices have just been astronomical and turning me off. But I've had some older independents, like 14, 18, 20-year-old ex-bourbon or refill. And I feel like they have that kind of bright, fruity lightness that I think would complement the sardines and tomatoes. So it would kind of, rather than, like Mike said, duking it out in your mouth, it would be almost like I guess, digestif, kind of like on the back end, just kind of a light little kind of touch through some sweet and some cream and just nice and light.
I like that call.
I really like that.
And for Chuck's Southwestern Bistro, I'm trying to think what I would pair with it. I could see like just a simple ex-bourbon because the spices on it, like you said, you have a little contrast.
Yeah, yep.
I
can see that.
Wouldn't go Pete with it, but that's just me.
I think eggs are tough. Like, what are you going to pair with eggs?
Yeah.
I was actually leaning towards a bourbon, like a 50% bottled in bond, it's kind of woody, kind of offsets a little bit, almost like some of the, is it chipotle peppers can actually kind of be like fairly woody or smoky in themselves.
Very smoky. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like the bourbon kind of would have that wood aspect to tie it in to work with the eggs.
All right. So we've all brought whiskeys to the table that we don't know what each of us have necessarily. We have some ideas. Curious to know what each of you have brought to the table and why. So I want to start with Adam because I'm interested to know what goes with sardines, or at least what you brought to see what you can do with sardines.
Yeah, I brought a super powerful Highland Park from SMWS called Sitting in the Sauna. And the reason I picked this one is for the sardines specifically is because the first tasting note is sushi in the sauna. Actually, and then it says potpourri on fire and coconut bacon.
I love their tasting notes.
So it screamed breakfast to me, and it's 61.4%. The fatty sardines just buffer that ABV so well. And I didn't try it before this session, but I've been eating and drinking together, and it's magic. It's perfect.
Sushi in the sauna just sounds like it's going to break certain food regulations and give you food.
It's probably not allowed in most jurisdictions, but
it's got a very short shelf life.
Yeah.
Sorry,
which distillery was that, Adam?
Highland Park.
Oh, it was Highland Park. Okay.
And actually, this one is very peated. Like I don't remember. It's been a while since I've had a Highland Park, but I thought Highland Park was kind of generally lightly peated, but this is pretty strong peat in this one.
SMWS love their peated Highland Parks. I did a tasting earlier this year, and they're often a lot peatier than what you get in the OBs or some IBs as well.
Yeah.
What's the ABV on that again, Adam?
61.4.
That's got some rank to it. Yep.
Yeah, but the oiliness of the fish goes well with it. And then for the donut, I picked a Whistle Pig Piggyback 100% rye, which is actually Canadian rye bottled in Vermont. It's actually distilled close to where Stuart lives.
Yep, not that far away.
So have you tried that? Have you tried that in your glass already while you've been eating different things?
I haven't got to the donut yet, but I previewed it before the session, and it was amazing. It was really good.
Have you tried it with the sardines?
I wouldn't do it. I don't know. I don't think I would. I don't think they would go.
I'm a little scared with that.
It would, Adam, because dill and fish go together, and some rice can be quite.
I'm gonna do it just for you guys.
Yeah,
there we go.
We appreciate you leaning across the plate and taking one for the home team. While he's doing that, Mike, what did you bring to the table for whiskeys?
Well, apart from my starter dram, my Kirkland Cowila. Well, sorry, Kirkland. Is it Cowila Isla matured peated whiskey with bacon in it?
We love that.
I went for a bourbon, a sherry, and a peated. My bourbon finish is the Glen Scotia 15, which is just an all-round really good whiskey and really good value, and it's got some of those notes that you were talking about just now, actually, Stu, with regard to pairing with the sardines, I think. My sherry is the ultimate bottling company, folks out of the Netherlands. 11-year-old Bunnahaven, all 11 years in sherry cask, 68.9. Puts hairs on various parts of your anatomy, I'm sure.
Cleon was in the middle of eating something. He heard Bunnahaven, and he just, in his little video, that he just piped up like a gopher coming out of the hole. Like, what?
I did hear a small squeak, actually. And then my peated dram is the Port Charlotte heavily peated PMC 01 from 2013.
Nice.
Oh, yeah. And that's, what is that, 50 something? Yeah, 54.5. And that is a lovely dram. So,
Make good choices.
well, I try.
And have you tried all of them with what's on your plate yet?
I have. I've just about got acquainted with all three of them, with at least with the toast and peanut butter. I thought this was going to be peated, that whole thing about cutting through and all the rest of it. Maybe it's the cask strength, but I actually think the thing that made my eyebrows go furthest up my forehead was the sherried Bunnahaven at cask strength, which I will say is surprisingly easy to drink. There's no water anywhere near this at this point, and right now it doesn't feel like it needs it. Now, it could be something to do with having a Kevlar stomach. I don't know. But that actually worked really well. I haven't got any further than that yet. So I'm expecting, my theory was the sherried Bunnahaven would be the one that would go best with the marmalade, because those bitter orange notes, really quite strong and distinctive. And I thought that would cut through, and the sweetness would be a really interesting offset. But I may be wildly wrong. I haven't got there yet.
Gotcha.
That's progressed so far, Captain.
Stuart, what did you bring with you? Well, aside from what may be underneath your desk around your feet, there's an Ugadal just happened to be right there by your feet, whatever. What did you bring to the table?
Was just driving by saying, drink me.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah. Other than my Ben Nevis, which almost perfectly described my breakfast, which is, again, that 2015 in a sherry butt, I've got a Millstone 7-year-old cask strength in PX. So PX for its entire life. Special number 23 is the addition, 51.6%. That was.
Oh, you gave me a sample of that, Stuart.
I think I did. Yeah. I've sent a few Millstones your way.
I should try that.
And you should. I don't know if it'll go with anything you got tonight. And then to round out kind of the lighter end of things, I've got an Aaron 14-year-old. Now, it's not the Aaron 14-year-old that everybody's thinking of. It's a single cask 14-year-old, entirely in ex-bourbon, and it's a local liquor store exclusive from Sierra Springs Liquor. I think, Adam, you bought one, and I shipped it to you. I shipped some olive oil.
I have one of those, too.
Yeah. Have you cracked it yet?
Yes, and I think that'd be amazing for pancakes.
Oh, dude. So the Carnmore, the Ben Nevis is almost too perfect. It literally tastes like pancakes, bacon, and maple syrup. Like, whoever did the tasting notes, spot on. Like, perfect. This Aaron 14-year-old single cask is a very much kind of like a toasty pineapple type of thing, and it is sublime with the maple syrup and pancakes. I don't know what that combination is, but it's so good. It beats out the Ben Nevis, hands down. And the PX Millstone is just too much raisins. So I feel like raisins doesn't generally go with pancakes and bacon. So that one was kind of a miss, but it was a good one to try for this whole exercise. But I think the winner is the Aaron.
Nice.
I think it's so good.
You know, the more we talk about this stuff, like with your stew, I thought the Kilhoman would be the pairing. That was immediate off my head. But the more I think about it, you know, do the same thing twice. It does. You want the contrast. Although Mike just had a particular reaction up in
we're gonna have to go right.
I just had a moment. I just had a little moment here with my peanut butter and the Glen Scotia 15.
Awesome.
Oh, that was spectacular. I still had this kind of gunk in my mouth and put it in. I didn't wait to clear my mouth. Oh, it was like a little party. It was brilliant.
Paging Scotty Monroe.
Glen Scotia and peanut butter.
Yeah, Glen Scotia 15, peanut butter toast.
Nice.
Yes.
Wow.
I'm going to revisit that.
You survived the whistle pig and the sardines?
Oh, yeah.
First, I want to ask the question, since we had the Aaron come up. I always find that Aaron whiskeys need a lot of airtime. Do you guys find the same? Like, for some reason, it's weird. Whenever I get an Aaron, I'm like, I need to just leave this for a long time before I taste it.
You got to like it's almost a sacrificial 2-3 drams out the top, and then you let it sit for a month, and
What
then
is
you
that
come back
about?
to. I have no idea. You come back to it, and it's like, aha, you have arrived.
Yeah. You know how many errands I've had where like the first pour, it's like, this isn't good. And then like when it gets down to half the bottle, it's like, whoa.
But it's on the packaging, yeah? It actually says.
Please discard.
Let Aaron.
Aaron.
Oh, Mike!
Yeah,
Sorry,
okay.
that's an, that's
Well
an
done.
international dad joke. Sorry.
Mike wins.
That
But
can
for
be cut
the
out, I'm sure.
for the rye with the sardines, it's disgusting. It's really bad.
It's really bad.
Now, there's a tasting note for you.
Again, I thank you for leaning over the plate and taking one for the home team.
It's like I think that it's just two really strong flavors that are not at all complementary and totally different. It's like you're just mixing. It's like when kids just mix all the paints together and then you just
You get a grayish brown, and that's it.
Yeah.
Cleon, what did you bring to the table?
Besides everything.
I was gonna,
The entire malt whiskey yearbook. Okay. So for the Vegemite, I've gone with an Edredauer 10 sherry cask. And I mean, it kind of looks the color of Vegemite right here. It's like soy sauce, and there's like a lot of that umami bitterness, but there's also that slight bit of sherry fruitiness. It's not too strong, but I think it's enough to keep it from overwhelming the Vegemite as well. But I think, yeah, because of the sort of yeasty soy sauce umami, I thought that'll go well with the Vegemite toast. And then for the egg muffin, I've got a Lefroy Cachis, Amontillado cask matured, and it's divine. Like the ash and smoke, and then the seaweed just goes so well with the fat, oily sausage muffin. So that's going really well. And I often pour a Lefroy. If I am to have a breakfast whiskey, Lefroy is often my first one to go to because it just holds itself so well with the fatty breakfast. And then,
Cleon, what's the ABV on both? What's the ABV on both of those?
all right, so the Edredauer is a 46%. I think this is quite like a common release by, I think, oh wait, no, I forgot to mention, it might be a signatory.
That's the signatory. Yeah. That's the unchill filtered collection, right?
oh, nice.
Yes, it is. I think, Stu, we've talked about this whiskey before.
We have, and I think it's a single cask. They're all single cask, those ones, right?
It is indeed. Yep, cask
Yeah,
number
yeah,
23 I've got. And then the Cachis is 51.4%. And then next, to go with the smoked salmon bagel, what do you guys think it is? What do you guess?
It's got to be Bunahaven.
Bunahaven.
Ben Nevis.
I do like a Nevis. But it is a Moynia, and it's one that you know very, very, very well, Rob, the Moynia PX. And what I think works so well, it's not only that peppery smoked fish flavor, but there's like a back end of coffee, and it just takes me to what I think eating a breakfast in Scandinavia might be: smoked salmon, aniseed, and then a nice cup of coffee with that. It's fantastic. It's my favorite pairing out of all of these.
So I wouldn't think PX with smoked salmon. That wouldn't enter my mind at all.
Yeah,
Me
totally.
neither. I would more go like Amontillado or Palo Cortado with salmon.
Well, you would, but I think for me it's more that this breakfast makes me think of drinking a cup of coffee, and that the coffee notes from this whiskey come out so well that it's kind of like drinking a cup of coffee with a smoked salmon bagel.
Right.
I'm not saying your pairing's garbage. I'm just saying like I
exactly
wouldn't have
what
thought
you're
of it myself.
I'm trying to start a fight.
Yeah. Shots fired.
No, I'm saying no shots fired.
Yeah.
No, the shots. We're drinking the shots. That's what's happening.
There you go.
And then for the Breck, I've got an Ardnamurchan, and this is cask 5290815. I don't know how to read Ardnamurchan. I've had like 6 different bottles, and I still don't know how to read it. But it is just like drinking blood orange juice.
Wow.
It's
Nice.
fantastic, and it goes so well with that spicy, meaty Borek. And like I said before, Chuck, whenever I'm eating anything spicy, I like to drizzle a bit of lemon or a bit of lime, and Ardnamurchan is what comes to mind for me. And then to finish off, we have another Bunnahabhain, but this is unpeated with an Amontillado finish, and that's to go with my choc almond croissant. Because Amontillado,
Delectable.
yeah, it's so nutty. There is that back end of chocolate in there, and yeah, it just goes so well with the buttery almond croissant.
Nice.
Rob, can I just say I have never enjoyed toast and peanut butter and marmalade and
So
oatmeal as much as I have done today.
Mike looks like he's in flavor country over there. It's like
Yeah.
he's getting a little cross-eyed.
Yeah, and with your light. By the way, the verdict on the oatmeal is the Port Charlotte.
Oh.
Stu, you were right. No, Chuck, you were talking about cut the creaminess and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Really, really nice. I think this is how I'm having it from now on. I might start pouring a dram of Port Charlotte on my oatmeal from now on. Instead of adding milk, I just add some oatmeal.
Pour that on.
That's a thing.
Of course. Chuck, what did you bring to the table?
So I went down my usual route lately of exploring American single malts,
There you
and
go.
I figured I need to apply the concept of Scottish regionality to this dish and sort of give it a go and see what I can come with that. So I brought two actually to compare, specifically because both of them meet my requirements for this dish. And I thought it would be kind of a fun contrast to see which one comes out ahead. And so the two that I brought are both single malts, both from the Southwest. One is the Kilkeegan Mesquiteed
Ooh.
single malt whiskey. This is their regular strength, so 46%. And honestly, this is so far for me the best American single malt I've come across so far.
Nice.
And then to pair up with it, I chose the Delbach Dorado.
At the Dorado, yeah.
Also mesquiteed, also from the Southwest. This one's from Arizona. There's a key distinction between the two that makes them different from each other. And I thought it would be cool to see how that plays out.
All right,
So,
I'll play straight guy to you. What's the distinction?
Yeah, so the Kilkeegan is aged. Off the top of my head, I'm going to have to kind of reach for it, but I think it's a couple of years in new virgin oak, and then it's finished in an ex-bourbon barrel.
Mm-hmm.
The Delbach is like 14 or 18 months or something like that in new American oak, and that's it.
Wow.
Yeah, so they're both mesquiteed. They both have barley that is roasted over a mesquite fire, so they are smoky sort of drams.
Right.
The one thing I have to say so far in exploring American peat, or American smoke for that matter, is that nobody except for one brand, and it's an independent bottler, and I can tell you about it, but nobody has attempted, to my experience so far, the kind of peat smoke experience that we've been talking about between, anything from Isla, that Highland Park you were talking about, like really forward, really pronounced peat smoke. There isn't yet an analog to that kind of peat smoky experience in the States. People are definitely playing around with peat smoke, like Westland's Coleri and these two mesquite smoked ones. There's a couple in, Texas that are definitely, turning the dials and trying to figure out how you can do a peat sort of analog to what they do in Isla, or in Scotland. But, I think, yeah, I've picked my winner for tonight with the Huevos Rancheros.
And that's the Kilkeegan?
It's the Kilkeegan. Good guess.
Nice. That's a beautiful whiskey.
It's super good. There's something about, and I was really hoping it would work out, the mesquite smoke working with the sort of melange of flavors that come with the spiciness of the peppers, the heat of the peppers, the collection of flavors that come with the sort of like the savoriness of the beans. And, the egg is really, I think, just kind of like what you guys were talking about. It's almost the fattiness of it that it doesn't really otherwise interact with the food at all. It's just kind of a flavor that rides off into the background. So you don't really notice the egg very much. What you do notice is like the vegetal notes coming through, and sort of like the compatibility with the mesquite of the Kilkeegan is actually really super good. That worked out.
Nice.
That's
Sound-
like the ultimate terroir right there. Sorry for using the T word.
T word, I love it.
Somewhere
Yeah.
Angus just tweaked.
Yeah.
But that's exactly what I was going for. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's an interesting point about thus far in your explorations, the absence of that kind of experimentation with peat in the same way we associate it with Scotch. But it kind of makes sense because, peat was part of the cultural fabric of Scotland.
Yeah.
It was a source of heat. It was how you cooked and for your fire and all this kind of stuff. So it makes sense that it would be more present because it was more present in daily life. And then peat is over here. There's plenty of peat. Well, not plenty, but there's lots of peat here. But it doesn't have the same place within the fabric of culture. So something like mesquite, on the other hand, absolutely does.
Yeah. Yeah. And, Scotland has 200 years of practice, with smoking their whiskies and figuring out how much is enough, how much is not enough, and how much is too much. And I think the States haven't yet done that yet. I'm going
to throw a curveball here.
Mm-hmm.
Almost all distilleries in North America that are making peated malt whiskey are using Scottish peat from either Simpsons or Baird's or whatever they're called. So it's not necessarily a smoking difference or a malt difference. They are literally buying 1-ton sacks of this and bringing it over. And what the difference is the stills and the cut points and the yeasts.
Right.
It is completely different. I just had a local distillery. They bought heavily peated malt from somewhere in Scotland. Again, it's probably Baird's or Simpsons. They usually ship out here in Canada. And, heavily peated, that's usually north of 30. That's usually 40, 50, somewhere there. And it was super, super light. And that's because I know there's that particular distillery's stills. They are high reflux stills. Mm-hmm. They're usually meant for making multiple different types of spirit because they're a craft distillery. They got to make gin. They got to make all these other things, right? So there's usually a lot of reflux. They're not necessarily designed to work well with extracting a lot of the fusel oils and phenols out at low cut points, like a big old fat squat copper pot still in Isla, or even like Leg, for example. So I think it's just fundamentally the ingredients are actually quite similar, but it's how the whiskey is made, I guess you could say, is where the biggest difference for North American peated malts are.
Yeah, so far I'm noticing it either is an emerging trend, but for single malt makers are beginning to call out where the barley is coming from. And some of them do mention, that it's imported from Scotland. And the ones that are trying to create something singular for themselves, or they're trying to play into the T word, Adam, they're growing, they're buying barley from local resources. And in the case of Westland and these mesquited ones, they're using local materials for the smoking effort. And they're definitely beginning to kind of make way. They're doing interesting things, and some of it works out. Yeah, and it is definitely good. So
I think one of the items too is usually you have to go to a custom maltster to do a small batch run of malt with peat. If you're trying to get in on a big maltster run who's making it for breweries and everybody else, they're not going to do your small little run and smoke it, because then they got to clean all their equipment. True. They got to do that stuff. And before Rob looked like he just had a bit of a aha moment.
I did.
So what are you pairing over there, Rob, and how's it going?
I brought with me 4 different styles, 4 different bottles. I have start a Scarabus 10.
Nice.
For a peaty dram.
Mm-hmm.
I brought with me my Heaven and Hill bottled and bond bourbon, because Heaven and Hill is more vanilla nut instead of the,
Is that the finished one?
What's that?
Is that the finished one?
No.
How? What's the age on that?
This is 7. They took the age statement off. It used to be 7 years, but they say this bourbon is, I think it was 7. Yeah, this bourbon is 7 years old. It does say it's still.
I'd love to try.
I need a clarification. I need a clarification on that last question. Is there an unfinished one? Serious question. You said, is that the finished one? Is there an unfinished one?
There's both can exist.
Right. This bottled and bond is just It's not finished in any sherry or whatever. It's just what it is.
Yeah.
Oh, I think I may have had too much to drink.
It's all good. I brought with me also, I think this.
It's the problem with eating oatmeal. This
It's
happens
all-
every time I eat oatmeal.
Don't mess with
Oatmeal goes right to your head.
Yeah,
does.
it's not the
My
Port
judgment
Charlotte
is-
in the oatmeal. No.
My judgment is impaired.
Oatmeal.
On the thought of trying to keep like a metal thing, I have with me a grain whiskey.
Oh, yeah.
Invergordon
Oh.
14. And at the last minute, I figured I'll bring in a fourth. I brought a sherry one. I had my Royal Brackla 12.
Nice.
And so with regard to the sausage white pepper gravy and biscuits, the Scarabus is the best. The peated one that goes with the sage and the Invergordon was, it was nice, but it didn't have like the punch that I wanted.
It's probably too thin. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sausage and peat, baby. Just like my muffin, it just cuts right through the fat.
Right. With the eggs and the grits, surprisingly, the one that was the moment was the Royal Brackla 12. The sherry with it,
Yeah.
it turned it into plums. I mean, just ripe plums.
Whoa.
I don't know why. Haven't had that happen to me before drinking my Royal Brackla, but there it was. Something about the eggs and the grits, it was wild.
That may be a good example of a contrasting sort of pairing.
And that the effect
Exactly.
that whiskey can then have, like, or the effect that food can then have on the whiskey. Like your whiskey tastes different because you've had that food in your mouth. You know, like when you have something sweet and then you go back to whiskey and then it highlights all the savory elements of that whiskey.
I think that's exactly what it was. It just
You mentioned sage more than once when you were talking about the gravy. And I make sausages, and you make a Lincolnshire style sausage, loads of sage, very distinctive flavor.
yes.
So I don't know how much sage you're using in the gravy, but I can imagine that is going to be a really interesting interplay with the whiskey.
It's not unsubstantial.
You're saying that the gravy is actually green, right?
Well, it's got a little green now. Not that bad. This has been great. Just out of curiosity, because breakfast is the ultimate comfort food. What is the best breakfast you've had when you've been traveling? I mean, we all have our own stuff at our local or home, whatever. I'll tell you, for example, there have been a couple of things. You know, people talk about the full English breakfast, and while that's tremendous, it's kind of standard. When my buddies and I did our a World War II trip, and we wound up in Saint-Mary-Glisse in France, I told you about my buddy who said he was going to help us by, handling the French, and he was relying on his high school French from 30 years before, and just it was awful. So we're trying to explain to the people in the restaurant that we were looking for breakfast and what we wanted, and we got, when we were trying to explain to them, eggs, hash browns, toast type of thing, and maybe some bacon on the side. They gave us hot dogs, French fries, and eggs. And I have to tell you, we laughed our asses off, but it was glorious.
Perfect. That is funny.
So what's either the favorite or most memorable breakfast from your travels?
For me, I've got something that just hit me. So back when I would travel down south, often, the way station for southbound travel to Antarctica is Christchurch, New Zealand. And beautiful city, even after the earthquake. But there was one place that was a Irish pub, and it's one of the few places where you could get breakfast early in the morning. And so they would have the full English breakfast kind of thing with blood sausage, cooked tomatoes over, English muffins and all that kind of stuff. And then on top of it, and Cleon, this may be a ring in your ear, but my favorite coffee really ever came from my love affair with New Zealand, and that was all of that ordered with a flat white.
Hell yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I love a flatty.
Yeah. That was probably my most memorable. Because it was, you're in a foreign country and it's, you're trying to find your way around, and you find this sort of like respite in a quiet part of town, and it's the one place that's open, and they make the perfect kind of breakfast, and you can get a beer with it on top of it. So
That sounds like a win all around.
I was going to say that's a win-win.
yep.
You say, full English is sort of a standard thing. And yeah, the standard full English is standard. It can be pretty mediocre.
Exactly.
You get an exceptionally good one. And I have to say, ironically, the best full English breakfasts I've ever had have always been in Scotland, with really good Stornoway black pudding and all the rest of it. Very good. But if I'm going to go outside of a full English and acknowledge that, a really good full English is pretty hard to match. There's a breakfast I used to be able to get years ago when I had an office down in Smithfield in London. And there was a pub, the Fox and Anchor, which is still there. And it would open in the early hours of the morning to serve the meat packers from the meat market across the road.
Right.
And it's very interesting. You get there super early in the morning and there'd be like guys with like white overalls with blood from carcasses all over them next to guys who were heading into the city. They were going to be, the dealers on the floor of the exchange and everything. It's a really weird mashup. But if the chef was in a good mood, he would do the mixed grill. And the mixed grill was pretty much every form of meat and organ meat that you could think of, piled on this big plate. And it wasn't until you'd eaten down for about 20 minutes that you realize, there's a bed of chips under here. There was everything. There were steaks, there were sausages, there were pork chops, there was liver, there was kidneys, there was bacon, sausages, everything on this bed of chips, which by the time you got to it was kind of like oozing with grease and fat and blood and loveliness. That is a truly memorable breakfast. They would serve it for lunch too if he was still not in a bad enough mood. It was never quite on the menu. You had to know. That's a good breakfast.
That sounds
Good.
tremendous.
Yeah.
It will take 5 years off your life every time you eat it, but it is a good breakfast.
And your point is?
Well, it's not about how long you live, it's how well you live.
Exactly.
I think we've definitively gotten rid of any vegetarian or vegan listenership that this podcast had over the last 3 years.
Wait, is whiskey vegan?
Yeah. How could it not be?
Absolutely. Yeah. Sure,
It would be. Yeah.
Because I remember hearing something weird about wine not being vegan.
Yeah, so sometimes you'll fine wine. I think the word is fine. So basically you use like egg whites to froth it up more or less and extract and collect all the little fine particles out to make it like there's no sediment in the bottom. And so if you look on the back, usually they'll say on the label if it's vegan or not, or sometimes it'll say contains egg whites or traces of egg or something. And that's just how they've been fining it, I guess.
I should make it clear. I like a nice carrot as much as the next man.
Yeah. I think my most memorable breakfast, and it's just super simple. Last year for my 35th birthday, my wife just surprised us. We're like, we're going wine tasting. We're leaving the kids. This is the first time both of us had been away from the kids. So it was truly like a, whoa, big moment here. And we went to the Naramata Bench, so Penticton in British Columbia, Canada. And they got 50, 60 wineries. We went wine tasting up and down the area there, and it was amazing. But there's this just iconic little 4 or 5 table bistro cafe kind of thing. And the weather there is beautiful. And it's just a simple breakfast. And it was kind of the same thing with whiskey. It's not oftentimes the whiskey that's good. It's the company you're with. I know it sounds like a little bit of a
Amen to that.
lush thing, but it was just a simple like fresh baked scone. A local lady made this like chutney encrusted goat cheese that was just phenomenal. Fresh fruit, a little bit of cheese and granola and things like that. And we just sat there, just no kids. We slept in. It was amazing. And it was, like I said, it was a simple breakfast. It wasn't anything crazy, but just perfect. The time, the location, everything.
I think that's really important.
That's great.
Cleon, you said that tasting notes are autobiographical, but Stu, the pleasure we take in the whiskey is the pleasure we take in the moment, and it is so incredibly situational.
Absolutely.
And I think being aware of that at the time is part of what makes any whiskey, like any moment, truly special.
Absolutely. I downed like half a bottle of Kilkerran 12 on my wedding night, and so now every time I look at a Kilkerran label, it just takes me back to when I got married, which is nice.
I do not want to know.
Then hung over the next morning, but,
You think of your wedding night every time you think of a Kilkerran. That's interesting.
And every time he gets a shipment of Kilkerran, Mrs. Cleon's like, get this stuff out of here.
We know Cleon's going to get more pleasure out of the Kilkerran warehouse tasting when he goes than anybody else.
That's true.
No. Every time a shipment comes, my wife's like, "Well, I guess I better throw out that linen because that's where all that whiskey has to go."
So, Adam or Cleon, any particularly memorable breakfast outside when you're traveling?
I've got a Portuguese one actually, so it kind of links well with your breakfast, Adam. I've got one. I'll show you guys a photo. It's from the city of Porto. It's called a Francesinha, I think. Someone's gonna reply with my butchered pronunciation, but it's okay. So let's start. It's a bed of tomato and beer gravy sauce, and then a toast sandwich. But they cut out some of the bread, and inside is sausage, bacon, a steak, and then another piece of bread on top with melted cheese and an egg. It is a heart attack on a plate, and it was...
That sounds like my kind of breakfast, if I'm honest.
And I'm sure there's a vegetarian option.
I don't imagine tofu in the middle would be the same.
No, my vegan fiance at the time, who's now my vegan wife, just had to kind of stare down on her phone as I ate this and made her wonder about my mortality.
Fantastic. Adam.
I'm a simple guy. What about the
I'm a simple man with simple pleasures.
the traditional French breakfast of a cigarette and a chocolate bar? Maybe.
Cigarette and a chocolate bar. So we went from Cleon, who ate 4 or 5 different animals at one sitting.
Whole animals at that.
Yeah. That's awesome,
Beauty.
Adam.
Well, one of those two people had sex before breakfast. And I guess which one it was.
Certainly wasn't happening after breakfast, I'll tell you that, Mike.
Oh, can't wait till episode number 5.
Guess we're getting further and further downhill with every episode.
I got to drink. Well, I got to eat more oatmeal, evidently.
Can I just say that the biscochitos that I made,
Yes.
I want to highlight one that I brought that was made for the biscochitos. And this is one I think you guys will get a kick out of, especially you, Adam. This is the bottle I recently picked up from Leopold Brothers, and it's
I want to know about that.
25th anniversary edition. The Fooder series, I think is the right way to say that.
Fodder?
Fodder, yep.
It's the beer, whatever they put beer in the big casks.
Yeah, it's a gigantic cask. It's almost like a 2-story cask, wooden cask. I think it's 100 years old, they said. It started its life in France. It was eventually purchased by New Belgium Brewing in Fort Collins, Colorado. Used for beer making for 20 odd years. And then Leopold Brothers recently bought it, I think, this year, if I remember correctly, and are beginning to use it to vat their whiskeys with. So, and this one is, I think it's just one of the coolest things I've come across in my whiskey journey so far. And I am not a rye fan. I don't know, I don't have any relationship with rye. This is my first rye.
That's a hell of a first rye to have, my friend.
Yeah, it is. So there's 2 things that make it distinct. One is, first of all, it's a proper Maryland style rye, which I still have yet to kind of discover what that genuinely means, but it is made specifically to be, to copy the Maryland style of rye making.
That gets thrown around a lot, but I don't really know what it means either.
I'll be finding out very, very soon and digging all the way into the history of Maryland rye. So the other half of what makes this interesting and unique is that it's made the other part that was vatted with it was a rye whiskey made on the world's only functioning 3-chamber still.
Huh.
And this is a still that was made by Vendome for the Leopold brothers. Todd Leopold basically is a historian and I think a complete geek when it comes to this stuff. The story is he was reading some old manuscripts and blueprints of, things that were 100+ year old distilleries, record keeping and things like that. and he came across a proper blueprint of a 3-chamber still. And he called Vendome up and said, "Hey, can you guys make this for me? Hey, here's the blueprints. You made this back then. Can you just do it again real quick?" And they sort of tussled with him, and they said, that's just not possible anymore. Nobody knows how to make that. You have the blueprints, but let alone nobody knows how to use it anymore. And what I learned when I did the tour a couple weekends ago was that the U.S. Patent Office burned down in a giant cataclysmic fire, maybe like 70 years ago, and destroyed so many records after Prohibition. So not only did the records burn in the fire, but before that we forgot everything about whiskey making because of Prohibition. And so this was a common type of still in pre-Prohibition era America. So anyway, he negotiated with them, and they finally said, "Well, fine, we'll make it, but we can't help you operate it. We can't troubleshoot it with you. If you have a problem, you're kind of on your own." And true to form, there was no user manual in any of the information he found. He literally had to figure it out from scratch, how to operate this 3-chamber still. And he's been working on it, I think, for a couple of years. And so this is one of their first. Now, I could be misspeaking, but I don't want to get that wrong. But this is certainly one of their first whiskeys that I've had. That is, and also the first 3-chamber whiskey I've ever had. So the characteristic that they described in the tour was that the 3-chamber still is not the same as a column still. It looks vaguely similar. It is a large column, but it does not operate the same. What it sounds to me like when you heard them describe it is that it's kind of like a pressure cooker. And so each chamber of the 3 chambers, and actually there's a 4th chamber on top, which is like a pre-stage. They basically pile in everything at the top, and then it sort of drains down into the chambers, but each chamber is pressure cooked. And so what you get is this sort of highly extractive still, I guess, or distillery experience where all of the oils come out, all of the big acids, big fatty acid chains come out and you get to capture all that. So it's supposed to be an especially gripping, especially oily type of whiskey product. And
do you find it to be that gripping, oily?
Well, it is 55% ABV, so I think it's going to be that way anyway. But it's super good. I mean,
it's just super good.
The rye, it kind of worked out. It was a bit of a gamble to think, will rye and aniseed and sort of a mild, sort of bourbony sort of flavor profile, even though there is no corn to this, to be clear, will it work with the cookies? And it's sublime. It's good.
Gentlemen, I appreciate you having breakfast with me and I having breakfast with you. I still need some of that Mike oatmeal, by the way, because that was tremendous.
Potent stuff, Robert.
Right? I was going to say, I'll make sure I cut it, just to make sure I don't want to go crazy with the whole bowl.
Cut it with some whiskey. Bring it down.
But we're going to roll into I Am a Distillery. And this episode will be presented by Adam. So, Adam, when you're ready.
All right.
Can I just say, ever since you won, Adam, I've had 3 separate people in my life who are holidaying in Europe now visit Oban. So basically your victory is haunting me ever since we recorded our episode.
And you'll remember it's the 8th most popular destination for tourists.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard of a few people going to Oban as well. Like non-Scotch drinkers just being like, oh, the only bottle I have is this bottle I bought when I went to Oban.
Such is the power of the Dramface Colonials Podcast.
I was just going to say, but, we're humble a lot.
Yeah, so we never say that.
So I am a distillery.
Mm-hmm.
Question number 1. Sorry, clue. Is it clue or is it question?
We'll do clue. How's that?
Clue. Number 1. I am a distillery.
Glengoyne, because I just have to. Someone's got to say it at some point. Someone's got to try.
Are you out, Rob?
I'm out.
You shot your shot.
Oh my God, if he's won, I'm impressed.
I was going to say, if I've won, I'm going to just jump up and down. Well, there are other things. Never mind.
Number 2, 4 years ago, my owners announced a large expansion with plans to double my capacity. No takers.
That's what he thinks of that.
Number 3, I use a long fermentation of 6 or 7 days in cypress wood washbacks.
Cypress.
Cypress.
wood.
Usually it's
Yeah.
Douglas fir, right?
Or Oregon pine, yeah.
Yeah.
Can we have a clarifying thing here? Because we haven't made clear whether we're speaking of a Scottish distillery or whether we're going more international.
Oh, you're cheating, Mike. You can't have that.
Well, I'm
You can't ask
asking
that.
the group. Is that a question we can get an answer to? You can feel free not to answer, of course.
This is not the forum for that question. It's too late. Should have been clarified before.
This is not the time nor the place.
How thrilling.
Number 4, I am known to triple distill.
Well, that looks like I'm in a load of crap. Someone.
Number 5, I am owned by the Brown-Forman Corporation.
Ooh.
Hazelburn?
Ooh.
No? Okay. Oh. Brown Foreman.
Number 6, I ferment with a yeast strain that is unique from all other Brown-Forman brands.
Oh.
We're far from Glengoyne, my friends.
Number 7, my spirit is distilled in copper pot stills, and I fill my barrels at a strength of 55% ABV.
Ooh.
Stuart's
Occontussion.
face.
Ah.
Did you hear my Occontussion? There.
Number 8, a popular nearby attraction is Cokie the Bear,
No Occontussion.
a black bear that overdosed on a cocaine shipment, which was dropped from a plane by drug smugglers.
Isn't that what they made the film about on Netflix or Amazon or somewhere? Cocaine Bear?
I wonder if this is in the malt whiskey yearbook.
What? I thought these are supposed to be getting closer, not more random. Oh,
Right.
boy.
This is fantastic.
Number 9, this is the last real clue.
Oh my God.
Although I am known for experimentation, my primary product uses a mash bill of 62% corn, 18% rye, and 10% malted barley.
Okay, I think that answers my question.
Stu or Chuck? Surely one of you guys. Oh wait, no, Chuck, you've already done it.
I already
Stu?
did.
Old Forester. I'm not sure if they're Brown Foreman, but
They are. I'm just trying to think who else is. This is, I don't know. Do they own?
I mean, I can't understand why people haven't gotten it with the cocaine bear thing.
I don't know which distillery that was near.
You never heard of Cokie the Bear?
Yeah.
His other name is Pablo Escobar.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
That's clever.
I don't know. Is it Woodford? That's the only bourbon I know.
Stuart, did you say Old Forester?
I did say Old Forester.
Okay.
All right. The final, number 10, I am Woodford Reserve.
Oh my God.
Look
Coming in clutch
Literally,
mode.
that is the-
the magic oatmeal continues.
that is literally the only bourbon I have in the house, and it's just pretty much the only thing I drink. Oh my God.
Triple distilled.
Jeez,
So-
Mike meal coming to a store near you for breakfast, hey?
I know.
Yeah, there you go.
That's true.
Okay,
that's
so-
that's what Adam should have had before his exams instead of sardines was some Mike's special oatmeal.
There you go.
Oh,
Or
yeah.
my special oatmeal with sardine.
Yeah,
Ooh.
there you go.
It's a special
I don't
strain.
know about sardines and oatmeal.
But it's got to be better than sardines and whistle pig.
Cleon, did you finish your entire platter for 4?
Yeah.
Whoa!
I've got the last bite of bagel here. Sorry.
Holy
God.
shit.
Bravo, my friend. Bravo.
You indeed do have hollow legs.
Yeah. That is amazing.
It's all good. It's all good. Gentlemen, this has been a great breakfast. I'm raising a dram to you all and to all the listeners out there. Wishing you a wonderful breakfast wherever you are. Comfort food, comfort whiskey,
Breakfast drams.
and sláinte. Cheers, my friends.
Cheers. Oh, that was good. I do have a bone to pick, guys.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
Has anybody watched the original podcast, the UK Boys?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
I'm going to fire a shot across Mr. Gordon's bow.
Oh.
I got a little triggered, I'm not going to lie.
Okay.
And he said multiple times, the American podcast.
Yeah.
Now,
I thought
Now.
the
we got Canadians, we got Australians, we got Americans, we got everybody here.
same thing. I thought the same thing. I actually did. Gregor starts saying, anything you can do, I can do better. I'm like, oh, shots fired.
I am going to point out the irony of somebody singing anything you can do, I can do better, and getting the words wrong. You know, at some point we're going to have to do one of these shows where it's just about whiskey.